Hi guys, I'm Anita and I'm back with another video. Today I wanted to talk to you about the books that I read in November. So this is my November wrap-up. November was not a very successful reading month in terms of all of the things that I wanted to read, but I did read 13 books, so it's not too bad. And I know for some people 13 books is a lot of books, but for me, in terms of my plans, I was a little bit let down with myself. Let's go over them a little bit. 8 of the books from my list of books read were from my TBR, and 5 of them were others. This means I had 6 books from my TBR that I didn't get to finish, 4 of which I started and 2 of them I didn't touch at all. In terms of my pages, I read a total of 4,084 pages, and they were like 314 pages per book. And out of the 13 books, 7 of them were audios, 3 of them were graphic novels, and 2 of them were read for me, like physically. And my ratings were a little bit all over the place. I had 1 book that was 2.5 stars. I had 2 books that were 3 stars. I had 7 books that were 4 stars. And then I had 1 book that was 4.5 stars, and I had 3 5-star books. So I'm happy that I had 3 5-star books in here. The first book that I finished was an Argumentation of Historians. This was part of my October reading that I didn't get to finish. So yeah, but I read this one, really enjoyed it, and it's just, these books are so much fun. I really enjoy our main character. In this one, our main character was sort of stuck in the past because of something that happened. And so she had to try and fit in with the time period because she didn't know if she was ever going to get back into the present life. And so she lived as though she was never going to go back and tried to fit in and not seem too modern and too much herself because people were thinking a little bit differently back then. And so in order for her not to get killed or deemed a witch or something, she wanted to make sure that she fit in with the general gender roles from back then. It was really interesting, and I liked the overall story. It took a little bit for me to really get into this one, into the enjoyment of this one. So that's why I give it a 4.5 stars and not 5 stars, but I definitely really enjoyed it and look forward to reading the next one. The next one that I finished was The Childfinder by Rene Denfield. This was the last and final book that I had to read for my genre TBR project in mystery, the mystery genre part of it. And this is a book that was sort of magical realism in a way. I don't know if you can call it that, speculative in a way. It has a magical twist to it. It follows this person who is able to who has an knack for finding people who are lost. So she can't really explain why, but she's able to, and she helps out when a girl is missing. And sort of they see it from 2 perspectives, I think, if I remember correctly. Overall, I just really never enjoyed this one as much as I thought I would. This was definitely one of those books that I thought I would end up loving from this selection of books from my TBR, but it didn't deliver as much as I wanted to. I ended up not really liking this one because it seemed a little, I don't know, it didn't seem like there was, I don't know, I can't really say what it was. I didn't like the magical aspect of this one, which I'm usually pretty cool with magical things in books, so I just didn't like how it was handled in this book, if you will. But I ended up giving this book 3 out of 5 stars. Then I also finished Murder in Chinatown by Victoria Thompson. This is book 9 in the Gaslight Mystery series. This series has just become so much fun to read from. I read the first half of this book actually in physical form, and then I read the last half in audio. And I really enjoyed this one. They are all pretty interesting. This one definitely explored Chinese culture back in New York in the 1800s and how they were treated how the Chinese people were treated by others and how they fared in New York at that time. It was really, really interesting, and there was definitely a lot of judgment and prejudices towards them. But it definitely was interesting. There was also a lot of talk about the Irish people in New York, which was also interesting. But I overall enjoyed it, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I finished was The Christmasaurus and the Winter Witch by Tom Fletcher. This is the second book in the Christmasaurus series. I don't know if there's going to be more. I didn't know there was going to be a sequel, but this was definitely really, really good. It follows William Trundle, who is like, I don't know how old he is in this one, 11 maybe? He is paralyzed from, I don't know, waist down, so he's in a wheelchair. And so he has some struggles, but he is really good friend with the Christmasaurus, who came to him the Christmas prior to this one. And in this one, Christmas is at stake. People, they are exploring the theory that maybe Christmas will disappear from the world, and he has to try and save Christmas. So it's a really, really fun Christmas story. I really enjoyed it. It's filled with fun illustrations throughout the book, as this one is. And all of the illustrations is done by Shane Devries, who has been doing all of the illustrations from Tom's books. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. They have a lot of depth to them, even though they're children's books. So I ended up giving this book 5 out of 5 stars. I was a little unsure if it was 4.5 stars or 5 stars, but I definitely enjoyed it, so I gave it 5 stars. So definitely met my Christmas expectations, so that was good. The next book that I finished was Angel's Peak by Robyn Carr. This is the 9th book in the Virgin River series. This book follows a sort of second chance romance between a man and a woman. The woman, when they left, the woman was pregnant, didn't tell the father, which annoyed me. And in the beginning of this book, it is revealed that he has a 3-year-old daughter. But they get it back into a relationship and all of that. And I sort of liked the romance, just hated the part where she didn't tell him about the fact that she was pregnant. It annoyed me, but I ended up enjoying it, sort of. I didn't hate it, it was okay. It was a 3-star book for me. The next book that I finished was Scott Pilgrim Volume 2 by Brian Lee O'Malley. This series follows Scott Pilgrim, who is living in Canada. It's sort of a slice of life type of manga series, where he is in this band, and you just see a sort of very short snippet of his day-to-day life. And he is having a girlfriend who has a lot of bad exes, and so they show up in these books, and he has to try and fight them or something. Not because that they want to be back with this girlfriend, just because apparently he has to fight them in some way. I don't know. It's pretty funny. It's not terrible. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and I find them pretty funny. The next one I finished is An Enchantment of Raymonds by Margaret Rogerson. This is the first book I read for the genre project, with a new category of the genre project, that is romance. And this is a YA fantasy romance that is centered around Fae. It follows our main character. She is a sort of artist. She is able to create paintings and stuff, and in a really interesting way that has some sort of magical purpose. And it's something that the Fae are very, very fascinated with. I thought the concept was pretty interesting. It's not like a favorite book of all time, but I was pretty pleasantly surprised by it, so I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I finished was Hogfather by Terry Pratchett. This is the 20th book in the Discworld series. It's the 4th book in the Death series, and I absolutely adore this series with death as I just love this. This one is just a sort of Discworld's version of Christmas, where it's called Hogwatch, and on Hogwatch night they have the Hogfather delivering presents and gifts and stuff and sort of like that. But in this one, the Hogfather is threatened because there's someone who wants to remove him from existence and remove also death from existence. So really interesting. Death finds out about this one but decides to take the presence as the Hogfather and trying to make sure that the humans still believe in the Hogfather, because it's very important that they believe in that. And it was just a really, really well told story, and I really, really enjoyed it. There was another part of this book that explored Death's granddaughter Susan and what she had to do, and that was really, really interesting. I really enjoyed how her person handled, how she developed in this book. She's definitely one of my favorite characters now from the Discworld, and this one just really showed how she has similar traits to Death, but she's definitely also very much her own person, and I really enjoyed it. It was a 5-star read for me. One of my favorite Discworld's books. I'm not sure if it's my favorite, but it's definitely one of them. And it's definitely become one of my favorite books of all time. It might be one of those books that I could definitely reread for Christmas, like pretty often. So that's really interesting. The next book that I finished was Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is my least favorite book of the month. This was a book that sort of is written in this sort of biography form that follows this band and how they did back in the 70s when they were really, really big. And it's a full cast narration of the audio, which I know a lot of people enjoy, but I didn't really like it. I thought that it made the book as a whole feel a little bit disjointed. It was a little bit, I don't know, it didn't really feel smooth when the story was told, and it definitely was something that I didn't really enjoy. So I ended up giving it 2.5 stars. Probably my most disappointing read of the month for sure, because I was really expecting to love this one. The next book that I finished was Nøkkens, which is the 11th book in Troldeliv. Troldeliv is, or Ogre Life, if I'm sort of translating it. Nøkken is difficult to explain. It's sort of godlike presence that lives in a cave, and they're really, really angry with him because they think that he stole their salmon, and he's just a really, really somber person, but it's his Christmas story. So it basically follows these two kids who goes and hunt for the truth, and yeah, this is Nøkken up here. So I read this mostly because first it was like a Christmas story, it's in a Christmas mood, and two, it is illustrated by the same people who illustrated the Valhalla comics. Peter Madsen is an artist team led by Peter Madsen himself, but there's a lot of other people behind that team. But it's also by Sidsel, who I guess maybe might be behind the actual story here, but I'm not sure. I'm definitely interested in reading more from this series. It was really, really quick, not surprisingly. But it's not like a graphic novel because it has full text, but it's just fun to read it as a sort of graphic work, if you will. The next book that I finished was The Woman Who Writes Like a Man by Tamora. This is the third book in the Song of the Lioness quartet. This one, Alana has definitely grown quite a bit. She has to make a decision about who she's going to marry, which that part of it I was not very interested in personally. But there was a lot of other things where I think that she handled herself really well. I liked the story of how she was developing as a knight. Like it was the first year of her being a knight and how she was faring with that, and it was really interesting to seeing that. I liked her relationship with the cat. It was pretty interesting. I enjoyed it and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I'm looking forward to seeing how this will all end up. Yeah. The next thing that I finished was The Eye of the Dragon by Stephen King. This is a standalone book. It's a fantasy book and it has some sort of relation towards the Dark Tower. When I first started this, I didn't know what it was, but I had a sort of feeling it might be something to do with the villain. And when I figured that out, I was like, yes man, this is awesome, and it makes so much more sense now. I really enjoyed this one. It is a story about these 2 brothers. The oldest brother is going to be king, and the other brother is sort of left behind, not listened to and all of that, and because he's the younger one, he's not in line for the throne or anything. And in this family, the king's aide, or the one they listen to, the guidance person, is Randall Flagg, and that is definitely in relation to the Dark Tower. I'm not gonna say more if you haven't read any of them, but that is the link. And it was really, really awesome. King Roland, their father, the boy's father, dies unexpectedly, suddenly, and Peter, the oldest brother, is deemed a murderer. He is blamed for what happened and is put in the tower away from everyone. And then suddenly our young boy Thomas, the younger brother, is the ruler of this country. And who does he go to search for the help? He goes to Randall Flagg, who is the person behind all of the things that happens in the bad things that happens here, because he is the villain. He has a dark purpose in this, and only Peter knows the truth, and so Peter has to find a way out of the tower in order to save everything. And it was such a fun story. I was really, really immersed in the story, and it took like, I guess, an hour-ish before I was really, really into this, but by then I was really, really enjoying it and really into the story, and I ended up giving this book a 4 out of 5 stars. It's definitely one I recommend a lot because for fantasy fans and people who want to try out Stephen King but who is used to read fantasy would pretty much enjoy this one, I think. He definitely has a good way of writing the characters and writing the villains, and so I recommend it for that. The last and final thing that I finished this month was the Fullmetal Alchemist volume 13 by Hiromu Arakawa, and this was definitely great. It is this one is I can't say much about it because it's like the 13th volume in a series. It separates the brothers unexpectedly, and it's definitely interesting how they're trying to find out how to get back to each other, and I really, really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. So those were all of the books that I finished in November. Let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of the books and what your thoughts were on them. What were your favorite books that you read this month, and if you read anything? Do you struggle with reading at this time of year as well, or is it just me? Let me know about that as well. And if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next video very soon. Goodbye.